Welcome everyone to this month's Exploring Quality in Family Childcare, Creating Inviting Play Areas. So we are talking all about your learning environment today, and we're going to focus more so on the indoor learning environment. That's where a lot of the research is pulling from as it relates to this topic. But please know that a lot of what we're talking about also applies to your outdoor environment. And we'll hear from a family educator later on talk about her outdoor environment. So there will be some representation in there as well. I didn't say this already. My name is Grace Eilers. I'm the Family Child Care Content Specialist with Satellite Family Child Care System, and I will be the facilitator today. And we are going to start, as we typically do, by placing this in the satellite accreditation standards. So in our standards, it states that materials are located close to the place children are likely to use them, and children are able to find and replace materials on their own. So this standard is referencing that intentional arrangement and display of your program's materials. So we're going to go into each of those components. We're going to dig a little deeper into those today. So this is all with the assumption that you have your materials picked out. We're going to talk about how you arrange and display them. This concept also shows up even more directly in the Youngstar criteria, and you can find it under developmentally appropriate environments. And it states that the environment is organized into play areas to support children's meaningful play. That is the basis, the core of what we're going to be talking about today are play areas with the intention of supporting children's meaningful play in your program. So we're going to begin by defining what we're all talking about when we talk about play areas, so we have that shared understanding of what we mean. Play areas can be defined as defined spaces for materials with similar learning objectives. So you're also going to hear this commonly be referred to as centers or interest areas, something along those lines. And we're going to hear from family educator Michelle Coker later today as well, and she is going to refer to her play areas in her program as centers. So here we can see a few examples. We'll have many more today. But this is essentially referring to organization in a way that's already fairly intuitive for many early childhood educators. Let's organize our dramatic play materials together into one area of the program, or let's create an art cart that has all the supplies for that fluid creative play, or on the right here, we're going to put all of our books together near a cozy spot for book play. And again, our main objective today is to talk about how you can arrange and display your space, no matter the size, to support children's meaningful play. So this is to hear from those of us in the room today. What play areas do you currently, or it could be, interest centers, interest areas, play areas, what do you offer right now in your program? Now, you may not have all of the options that you offer out at one time. You may rotate what you have out. You can share whatever you feel comfortable with. You don't have to have a long list. We're trying to get a gauge of who's in the room and what do children have access to right now. So this can be something maybe more unique, like, well, I have a grocery store or a baking area, or something more traditional, like I have my art corner or sensory table. I see, oh, so many chat messages already. Okay, I have to scroll. Book area, dramatic play. See lots of dramatic play. Water area. Liberkey says the book area. Manipulatives. The kitchen, the art area. Silent reading. Grocery store. Kim has a grocery store. Dramatic play. Music. I saw a lot of similar areas being called out, but a lot of also unique ones. So I'm hoping that as we move along today, you'll get some ideas for ways that you can combine areas together to maybe help engage children and simplify your space a little bit more, depending on how much room you have. So we're going to talk, before we get into all of the inspiration, all of the ideas, we are going to talk about why you should organize your materials. Why is it that high quality early childhood environments have these carefully designed learning areas and materials arranged so that children can choose, find, and replace materials on their own? In a simple way, you could say that you do this to promote children's choice in different types of play and learning. And we're going to dive into the research behind why intentionality behind your learning environment is so beneficial for children and then also you as an educator. So we are going to start by talking about, like I said, a few studies that look into this interaction between the physical environment and children's stress levels. Cortisol is the stress hormone that many researchers have looked into because humans have a fairly predictable cortisol pattern that begins to develop right around toddlerhood, where you have the highest cortisol level in your body in the morning and the lowest in the evening. Now, this is a really important hormone. It does things like wakes us up in the morning, it regulates your blood pressure, and it's also released when you have an activated fight or flight response. And the research around children's cortisol pattern while attending childcare is very well researched, and it shows that instead of that steady decline from morning to evening, there is a mid-morning spike. So that's depicted here on the graph in that blue solid line. This is what we would expect for a child in a child care program, just to have that mid-morning spike and go back down and reach that low level in the evening. And cortisol is not inherently, it's not a bad hormone. It's necessary. It's something that is actually adaptive in our bodies, and they need it to function. So studies like Sanjanemi and their colleagues in 2011 find that the quality of the physical space, the physical environment, does actually play a role in children's daily stress hormone pattern. So researchers see that when controlling for other variables, children who are in disorganized physical environments, they exhibit more atypical stress hormone patterns throughout the day. So an example of such would be depicted here using the red dashed line on our graph. And what this is showing is that children who do exhibit this atypical pattern are closer and closer to entering a fight or flight response in these types of environments. And you're going to find more unpredictability in children's emotional response to stress. So what this is telling us is that your physical environment helps act as a protective factor by reducing stress and then improving children's tolerance to experiencing big feelings throughout the day that they will inevitably experience. So, like I was saying, essentially what I was saying is that the environment tells us a lot. We receive so much information from our surroundings that we don't even consciously think about, especially as adults. For example, I know that looking at this image here, this is a library. That is something I was taught. It's not just intuitive. I also know that these are quiet spaces. Again, something I learned from visiting libraries before. Now thinking more about the intuitive messages that I receive from this environment when I look at this image here, I see the table and chairs next to the bookshelf, which may tell me that I can use this space to take out the books and then browse them. There are definitely visuals throughout the environment, even in this library, that give me more context clues into how to behave and use the space. So for example, how this library may use the Dewey Decimal System to classify and categorize books on the shelves. So that way I know how to find and replace one on my own. So as we continue, consider what messages you hope your children receive from the program's environment. Early childhood research also shows that children's play becomes richer and more meaningful when you arrange materials with similar learning objectives together. So this is particularly important for toddlers who are still developing those important cognitive skills that are necessary to focus on something for more than just a few minutes. Your organized environment is helping to guide children in how they may get started. So for example, in the left image here, simply placing a lamp near an assortment of loose parts encourages this child to play with light and shadows. For the child on the right, placing objects that offer interesting visual experiences when placed on a light table, that's going to help jumpstart that deeper play. So these bugs and insect cards that you see here, those were clearly made for a light table, so it would make sense to put them near it. But you can also add other materials near the light table that were not traditionally made for a light table, like sensory bottles or window blocks, anything that can transform when light passes through it. Researchers also find that the intentional arrangement of furniture impacts the likelihood for children to engage in social and cooperative play. So most of that statement comes down to, is there enough space for 2 or 3 or 4, however many children want to play together, to play comfortably in this area? So research like Yusuf Abbas and colleagues in 2016, they find that it is the visual spatial relationship of furniture in a space that is highly impactful for children's behavior. And we're going to go into that a little deeper right now. So again, this study that we're going over was done in 2016, but it is building upon years and years of research that has been done with similar learning, with similar research objectives and outcomes. And the researchers, with the help of architects, they categorized classrooms into well-defined, moderately defined, and poorly defined environments, looking at the furniture arrangement and setup. So the question is, does the spatial surroundings provide children with some sort of environmental boundary for the play area? And they found differences in children's behavior when looking at each of these spaces. They found that children were more cooperative and more engaged in more positive social interactions in well-defined spaces compared to moderately and poorly defined. They saw that clear difference in behavior. So this graphic right here, this is a figure directly from the study. Now clearly these schematics are of group programs. So we're going to think about what this means for, say, from a home-based perspective. Let's compare a well-defined and a poorly defined home-based learning environment based off the guidelines set in the study. As you can see, the furniture is helping to create boundaries around play areas within the space. So in the well-defined example, there is clear distinction between construction, literacy, and creative play areas. Now, this does not mean that children won't want to take materials from one area and bring them to another. There's nothing wrong with children doing that, but these boundaries are going to help children's behavior and their deeper play. So you can see how just a few changes of swapping furniture around, just swapping where your shelves are located, can help create those visual spatial boundaries for children. So this is what it looks like in the well-defined space and poorly defined. You can see in this example, the shelves are situated around against the wall of the room, and there's more overlap between spaces. So these are simply two examples I created to help us visualize what this can look like in a home-based environment. Every space is going to be different. So depending on the size of your indoor environment, you may have room for fewer areas or more, and you may rotate out some. You may also have a separate room that has additional areas. This is just to get us thinking about how furniture arrangement and the visual spatial setup of your space impacts children's behavior. We covered why organizing your materials are so important for children, and now we are going to continue talking about the arrangement of your space. So let's develop those play areas out a little bit more. And I'm going to introduce one way to conceptualize your play areas, and that is by type of play rather than type of material. So instead of just having the block, the art, the manipulatives area, you could have the construction and creative play areas. We learned from organizing furniture in certain ways to create visual spatial boundaries that simplifying your environment in a way could actually be beneficial for children's deeper play. So if you don't have the space to have 10 different play areas, how can we combine some of those and some of the materials by type of play to help accommodate a smaller space? Again, this is just one way to organize your space, and I will send in a follow-up email to this event, I will send more resources to give you even more ideas on how to organize your materials into play areas. But for the purposes of today, we are going to focus on these 5: construction play, creative play, dramatic play, literacy play, and sensory play. We are going to hear from Michelle Coker. She's the owner of Scribbles and Giggles Family Childcare. And Michelle is going to tell us about an example of an interest area that she has in her program.
One interest area that I have in my program is the Writing Center. I feel like the kids really like the Writing Center a lot. They just love to write, which I love, but I feel like writing and kind of art kind of go together sometimes. So like in the Writing Center, I will have, different types of writing utensils. I won't just have markers or just have crayons or just have pencils. I'll have, maybe I'll have some glitter pens or some colored pencils or just chalk or dry erase markers. Each kiddo has their own individual notebook because they always love to do their writing and scribbling. So I will give them each a notebook when they first get enrolled in my program, and they can always just grab that notebook out and just write in it. And it's just a fun thing to send home with parents when they fill that notebook up. But I also keep like half sheets of paper, themed paper that kind of goes along with our theme, word cards, their name cards. We put in stencils, letter stamps, number stamps. I have little colored pieces of papers with like printed letters on them that they can use, stickers. And I always rotate those materials. So I try to keep it like for a camping theme, we will, I might not have regular pencils out. I'll grab like pencils that are made of sticks, and I'll put those in the center at that time, just so it kind of still goes along with the theme. And they don't have to go in that center. A lot of the times they just choose that center, which makes me really happy because I love when kids can write, or interested in writing. So yeah.
And we'll talk more about how you can incorporate, if you don't have, say, a writing center or a room for a writing area in your program, how you can incorporate writing materials into all play areas so that children have access to writing materials and notebooks and paper when they're engaged in all sorts of play to really boost that early literacy. We are going to go through together and look at examples of play areas now that are arranged by, like I said, type of play. So we are looking into literacy, construction, dramatic, sensory, and creative play. So we're going to begin with literacy play. Here we have some home-based examples to help spark some ideas for your space. And I know that many of your decisions are going to be dependent on the amount of space you are working with. So for Sarah's program on the left, she has room to space out her books. She has 3 different shelves that can accommodate books. She can have them arranged facing out. And she can also offer a few additional materials to extend children's play, which includes, in this example, some animal figurines that go along with the mouse count book is on one of the shelves. On the right-hand side here, you can see that Elemental Preschool has created a clearly defined literacy area using some curtains with, a shelf, some pillows, and an assortment of books and writing materials. Oh, also want to note that we're going to be looking at a lot of different types of examples just to inspire you and give you some ideas on what this can look like in your space. Please know that you will receive a copy of the slides in your email. So you may not have as much time to look at every single photo as you may need. You'll get those in a follow-up email. So here we see a few more examples of literacy play spaces that are very clearly defined. And I saw a great question or comment in the chat, actually. I think it was more just a statement that oftentimes when home-based educators use the shelves around the wall model, and it falls into the poorly defined category, it is due to wanting to make sure that you have access to line of sight. So this is really important to note that safety is the #1 goal here. And when we think about creating these visual spatial boundaries, it's really important to make sure that you consider the height of the shelves in mind. So I look, or the height of the furniture, so that you can still see and hear children in your space. So for example, you can see at Shilada's program here, she's clearly still defining this is where the literacy area is. And she has a lower level or a child-sized couch and smaller chairs to help her do that. She also includes movable floor cushions for children. I see some rocking chairs again, has a soft rug. On the right here, you can see this space is also very clearly defined with the help of some walls and also putting in furniture for children, where you see spaces where children can sit alone or even with a friend, and lots of book options, lots of soft materials. Here are a few additional examples. Again, this is a space that your literacy play it doesn't just have to be the book area. It can include things like writing materials, puppets, felt boards. This is where we have a listening center area, I guess, a listening station is what I wanted to say here, with books and a CD player where children can listen to books even. This is where you can put your letter magnets, your alphabet puzzles. All of these things can be combined into the literacy play area. So moving into construction play, this is where you can really get creative with what you rotate in and out for children. So you may have your basic unit block set in this area, and then you may swap in different animal or people figurines. I'm sure many of you do that often now. Swap out the vehicles that you have in there. This is where you can include those loose parts like recycled materials, cardboard pieces. I even see they have a bowl of pipe cleaners up on in the left image, up on the top left. See wood cookies, wooden rings of various sizes. This is this is a great space to incorporate those natural materials as well. And in addition to that, building tools like your measuring tape, signs, materials for stacking even. I see that depicted here in Sarah's program on the right image, on the right side of that image, the colorful cones. And I notice when I look at these two images that each material has a home. It's clear that each material has a specific place in that play area. So I can see here that the loose parts, those are placed in baskets, which will help children easily take them in and out and then replace them or return them when they need to. And this is going to help children a lot in knowing where things go. In the program is putting labels in there. We don't see any examples of that here, but we will later on. And all of these baskets too that I'm looking at, especially on the left-hand image, you can find those at thrift stores for very, very cheap, just to put your materials that go together in a basket so they can easily be taken off the shelf and then returned. So here are a few more examples of construction play areas. So I see, again, combining different types of materials together. I see the books and signs here on the left. You can add your manipulatives even to this space, if like linking blocks or Lincoln Logs or Legos. On the right here, I thought this was a really fun idea, really unique idea from Happy Hands Early Learning Academy. This is a home-based program that has their construction play area near carpet, and they wanted to offer children that hard surface to build on. So what Kathy did was she made this out of particle board, stick and peel tile, and some clamp-on foam, which I just like to call those cut in half pool noodles. And this is going to help children who really want a sturdy surface to help build really tall and complex structures. And this is also where you'll find in the construction play areas where some children may exercise their creativity by collecting materials from other play areas to use then in the construction areas. You can even take something like all loose parts approach to construction play, like what you see in this program here. And it is hard to tell, but all of these felt boxes are labeled inside with different types of, they're labeled with images on the outside. And then inside, there's all different types of recycled materials and loose parts for building and constructing. So for spaces like these, this is where the display of materials is going to matter even more. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. All right, moving on to dramatic play. Now, dramatic play, that is my personal favorite because there are so many fun opportunities for you to be creative as an educator. So you're going to traditionally find the play kitchen, your dress of clothing, your baby dolls, but there are a lot of additional opportunities for you as an educator to customize it. So this can be the space for adding in seasonal themes and props. You also see another example of labels, which help children find and replace bins that they're taking out or just materials in general that are displayed on shelves. You can see that in the left image here in the top right-hand corner. And those look to be definitely homemade and hand-drawn. Here are a few more examples of dramatic play areas. And this is where you may place your dollhouse or your role-playing props. Cheryl here on the right has created this campground dramatic play area where she has included sleeping bags, a tent, other camping materials that you would need. And then what I love is the plush fire pit. Here are a few more examples of different types of unique dramatic play areas. And I know one of you had mentioned that you do offer a grocery store in your program. So along similar lines, these play areas are centered around a theme. So we have a vet clinic here on the left and a pizzeria on the right. And you can see that it doesn't take much to invite children to engage in more complex dramatic play scenarios. Like, for example, in the vet clinic here, we have a few plushed stuffed animals that act as pets. I see lots of labels as well, which shows children where materials go, and it can also help them with sorting. This can also be a space where you add in those notebooks, the pencils, the clipboards that you may have for children to write notes on. Definitely in the pizzeria, you can add writing materials for children to take down orders if they're acting as a server. What I love about this right-hand image here, the pizzeria, is you can see that wooden dramatic play window there. And that's helping to create some of the visual boundaries that we were talking about earlier, the visual spatial boundaries. Now, I know most programs are not going to have this type of material or piece of equipment in your space, but you can also make it using very inexpensive materials. Like you can make a window using crates, like 4 crate boxes that you stack on top of each other in a grid of 2 by 2, and then using 3 different 4 by 1s to create a pretty simple window for children. And then again, that's just inviting children to engage in more complex dramatic play, and then also providing that visual spatial distinction that they need between different play areas. Moving on to some sensory play ideas. Obviously, this is where you're going to put your sensory table, scoops, sensory bottles. You may even have sand and water available at all time. I know many of you said that you will offer a sensory area in your program, or different textures like in the image here on the right. And this is another space where you're typically going to see children further enhancing their play by bringing in materials from other play areas like the construction area or even the art area to explore further in the sensory bin. And not forgetting about proprioception sensory play. This is also where, so this is where you would place your large motor opportunities. Many people will choose to space out the tactile and the large motor items a bit more. And all of these items that you see on the image here are available through Satellite's equipment loan program. The nursery gym on the left-hand side, the swivel chair on the right, as well as the little rocker that is flipped upside down in the right-hand image here. Creative play spaces. That includes all of your art materials and a place to develop art that won't be disassembled at the end of the day or at the end of the week. This is where you're going to put all of your consumable items. Here we have a couple examples. You may have space for a separate table for the creative area, like at 100 Acre Play Care, or you may choose, I'm going to put my art area near my mealtime table because that is the amount of space that I have, like in Temetope's program here at Flourish Family Child Care. And also keeping in mind floor space as well. Floor space in the creative play area can be beneficial for children who want to work on their core by laying on the floor to create. As another type of creative play, you may also choose to place musical instruments in your creative place area, or maybe materials to create your own musical instruments. So combining the music and visual arts into one space. A lot of this is going to depend on what you have space for in your program and how many distinct areas that you decide to create. So I love how the images here show a few different ways to engage children in musical creative play. The image here on the left shows that their music bin is an old suitcase that can be easily stored and taken out when children want to use it. We're going to hear from Michelle again, and I asked Michelle to tell us about considerations she makes for toddlers. So we're going to hear from her, and then we're going to look at some infant area examples.
So I don't really have a focus like play area for toddlers. I kind of just gauge on what a child's developmental level is, and what they need and their strengths and abilities. So for toddlers, there's a lot of gross motor movement, so I keep out a spinning chair for them, or I will keep out riding toys for them. I like to keep out like soft play mats, or we like to use our nugget couch. They like to play on that a lot. And then just making sure that everything is safe and accessible to them. So if I have smaller toys or smaller items, which I do use a lot of sometimes, I stay aware and make sure, okay, this child does like to put things in their mouth. I'm not going to put that out for this theme. I will then try to find something that might be a little bit bigger in size that is kind of similar. Another thing too is that I like to focus on with toddlers is the dramatic play area. Like I love to set up little, grocery stores, or in the winter sometimes we do like an ice skating rink, which they absolutely love. And I feel like a lot of that also gives them a lot of gross motor movement too. And it's just a really good way for them to practice their social skills as well.
So thinking about how what we've talked about already, what Michelle had to say, connects to how does this apply to infants? Now, everyone's space is different, so you may choose to offer a separate space for infants to store and display all of your infant-specific materials, like in Maria Laura's program here on the left image. This one is gated off from the rest of the program. Whereas in Brandy's program on the right, this is a space that is accessible to all children, but it is geared towards supporting infants. So it depends on the children that you have in your space and your needs, whether or not you want to have something that's more open access for infants or something that is more closed off. But we know that infants, particularly non-mobile infants, they need a lot of support in accessing infant-safe materials. Whereas your crawlers, they're going to want to explore anything and everything that they get their hands on in your space. And it is through that exploration and observation of the older children that they begin to recognize patterns in the environment and engage in more complex play over time. To end our discussion about arrangement, we are going to now hear from Michelle how often she rotates her materials.
For material rotation, I usually rotate every 2 weeks, sometimes a month, depending on how well the children are, or if they're really interested in, the theme. I might keep it out longer. So my centers or my interest areas, some of them will like stay up for like a month if I can kind of like make it go with the next theme. So like in the winter time, if we have a winter theme for 2 weeks and then a snowman theme for 2 weeks, in the science center I might have learning all about snowflakes and ice and snow. So I'll keep the ice and snow center up in the science center, and then we'll still go along with our, snowman theme and winter theme. And sometimes in my dramatic play center, I do have things out a little bit longer than I usually would. Um, in my science center, I do keep, I always usually keep out magnifying glasses and mirrors, um, scales, and just like little grabber tools. I try to make sure that I incorporate some kind of natural material, and I usually do that with each rotation um, of the themes and centers. So.
Michelle talked a lot about how she very, very frequently rotates the materials that are available to children to help continue to engage them in deeper play over time. And we're going to, again, like I had said at the outset, we have been talking a lot about the indoor environment. So we're going to hear now from Marilee Ihani of Shishu Family Childcare talk about how you can create defined spaces in your outdoor environment as well.
My outdoor classroom is divided into clearly defined areas that have organic curved borders. So we have for our patio, um, since we were getting a new patio and we were opening a childcare, we actually had them pour it so it curves around to just really have a natural shape. And then we stained it brown so that it also isn't just gray and just this really nice element to it. On the patio, that's where they use balance bikes and tricycles and scooters or little ride-on ones. They have sidewalk chalk. We have a patio table and chairs if we're going to eat outside that day. Um, this summer, our goal is we're building a little wall around it, just 2 bricks high, where now the kids can walk around it and have fun that way. And I originally thought it might help keep the bikes on the patio instead of rolling off, although sometimes they're now trying to see if they can balance a bike on top of the wall, but we're figuring it out together. Uh, Next to that is the grass space, which is an open space that they can run, they can play with balls. Our yard actually has a little slope, so the kids might be rolling down that. They call it a hill. It's a very gradual slope, but it's enough of a hill that they can put some of the rocks that we have a couple of big rocks that they can lift. And so they were rolling them down and seeing whose rock was winning and making it further. I have a wood chipped area that we used. I think they're some kind of deck board that's manufactured material and that we are able to bend it by using some stakes. So that way we actually have the wood chip area also curves and kind of reflects the shape of the patio. So they both have a flow. And that's where we keep the large equipment that really, it could go anywhere for the most part, but it makes it that much easier that you don't have to mow around it. It has kind of its different area. If the kids needed a little space from each other, you have some defined areas on where to tell them to be or not be. Um, so for the most part, that isn't an issue. But on there, we have a dome climber. This last winter, we had trimmed some of the hedges and we had big branches with like some leaves on them that we draped over it. So all winter they had a little fort. And then we just recently were able to pull those off when it was yard waste pickup. And the kids were like, whoa, we've got a climber. And some of them didn't care if the branches were over it or not. They were climbing on it. But most of the others, it was a fort all winter and they were excited to have the climber back now. I have a playhouse that is also their mud kitchen. Then we have a sandbox, teeter totter. That's a 7-passenger airplane that works great for childcare because there's always a seat for someone, even if they have to take turns on which seat. But there's basically a seat for everyone on it. There's a patio swing back there that then if they want to just have some time to relax a little bit, or if they want to cuddle, like we could sit there. We have some large stumps that we're putting back in. We used to have some, they eventually got rotted, so we had to get rid of those, and we got some new ones last year that we're still transitioning to the back because they're pretty heavy, but we got one of them back there and the other two are going to slowly make it there. Another thing we purchased were some really large rocks that are very big and heavy. So with my husband, we slowly roll them and rock them and pry them into place. And I'm sure he would love it if we never had to move them again. But we have like sometimes they're in a pile a little bit, and now they're like spaced out, so they're a stepping stone, and it's kind of a nice way you can change it up, but then you don't have to. We have also little xylophone, kind of like wind chimes, but little xylophone that they can play with. And another thing we have is they're threaded rods that then have washers on them, and you pull the washers up, and then they vibrate going down, and that's another instrument that they love playing with outside.
So we covered the arrangement of your materials. We heard from Michelle, we heard from Marilee. I am going to introduce the concept of play area display today. That's how we're going to end our time together. And we're going to start by watching a very short clip introducing this concept of play invitations from UW Extension.
Hi, my name is Dr. Anna Clarkson, and I'm here with Parenting Behind the Behavior from University of Wisconsin-Madison Division of Extension. What is an invitation to play? Invitations to play just cut through the clutter for kids. We can take this into this. An invitation for a tea party for two. Or the chance to wash some vegetables in the sink. We can turn this overwhelming clutter into an invitation for an animal hospital. What's just a stack of books can be turned into an invitation to read more about a subject. Invitations to play don't have to be fancy. In fact, the best is when you can take things you already own and help children see a new way to use them. Then leave children up to their own devices to see what they can devise next. This even works with older kids. Invitations are all about taking something that looks like clutter and turning it into something that looks like fun, that looks like an opportunity to engage. Clutter, fun. When we sort things out, we teach children to see the endless possibilities before them. Some children will require us to sit down and start an invitation, and then may be able to engage by themselves independently for a while.
So as the video mentioned, play invitations can help invite play by offering suggestions that spark children's imaginations and then combine materials in new and interesting ways. So play invitations, they can also help intentionally spark math, science, and literacy play by recommending, prompting certain materials or experiences together. So we're going to end by just looking at a few examples of what this can look like, and then we're going to hear from Michelle. So play invitations, they will only look like this before children get their hands on them, obviously. So maybe about 5 seconds, they'll look like this at the beginning of the day or right after a nap. So we're going to see these examples were created by educators before the children arrived. Most often you will find that children, when invited to play using this technique, they are going to quickly come over and begin using and manipulating materials immediately. And then shouting out here in this image, we have very similar wool, wooden, and felt pieces in Satellite's Curriculum Loan Unit program. So it can be as simple as just, taking a few minutes at the beginning of each day or right before children wake from nap and setting out materials for children to explore, like in these two construction play examples here. I see so many opportunities for dynamic play in both of these. On the left, we see we are combining light and ramps and balls. And on the right, we see opportunities for exploring different shapes, colors, and patterns using the mirror box and the pattern tiles. We have some creative and math play invitation examples here with the Play-Doh and loose parts, and then a very simple sensory play invitation just using some dry oats and taking the puzzle pieces out and setting them all up for children. Just taking that extra step in displaying materials in a way that invites children to use them. On the left here, you can see we have an infant play invitation. Again, so simple, just taking the bin of balls out and placing it near some different sized rings for stacking and exploring. And on the right here, you can see it can be as simple as you setting up a tea party in the dramatic play area. And again, children may, just immediately go and choose, I don't want this direction for my play today. I want to do something else. And they may just immediately transform it into something else. And that is okay too. So we saw a lot of example images in our event today. Again, you will receive a copy of all of these images if you would like to look at them again. But I know that it's not enough. You shouldn't be on your own for coming up with all of these really creative ideas and interesting play invitations. So we're going to hear from Michelle where she goes for support in planning her environment.
I really like using a lot of different social media, platforms or outlets, because there's so many great teachers out there. But not only just teachers, I really like to make sure that I'm looking up specific areas. I don't know exactly how to pronounce it, but I think it's Jayberry, and they are just these two women that are, I believe, in Canada, and they are specific to their library there, and so they talk a lot about story time, and they do a lot of songs and finger plays. So I really like to watch them and get ideas from them. I also, really like Teachers Pay Teachers. So I will find some of my signs or posters or word cards and things that I like to put up in my centers. I like Play to Learn Preschool and Pocket of Preschool. I really learned a lot from them. And just other family childcare providers in our area too. Like just when, you're on Facebook or, Instagram or something, I see a lot from other providers that I think are really, really great ideas, and I'll just get a lot of my ideas and support from them too. Some books that I do like to, that I will refer to a lot are The Power of Guidance, Teaching Socially Emotional Skills in Early Childhood Education, the Individual Child Focused Curriculum, and The Intentional Teacher, and Nature-Based Early Childhood Education. I get a lot of my ideas and support from those books as well.
So here are those book recommendations from Michelle. The Satellite Resource Library also includes The Power of Guidance and The Intentional Teacher. So I would highly recommend, as I've mentioned a couple times throughout our time together, if you are participating in Satellite, explore our equipment unit loan and equipment and curriculum unit loan program and our resource book library to add to your rotation and to your support system. So we are right at time. We are going to begin wrapping up. But if you have any additional suggestions for resources in planning your environment or ways that you find support, please add those in the chat. Want to say thank you to all of you for taking the time to spend this hour with us today. I hope this was an inspiration to thinking more intentionally about your play areas.